drive or two.
That is a small one.
They give it to the second artist or they give it out to the city plus.
Okay, so we're ready to go. The recording noise had already started, but we had us on mute, so we're off mute now. So I'm going to say good morning, everyone. Welcome to our 9 o'clock. Today is actually our 2025 budget year hearing agenda. We do have our workshop that we're doing ahead of it. So we're here in the conference room. As soon as this is over, we'll be taking a 10-minute break and we'll be headed over to our hearing room for the actual official adoption of our budget. Mr. Macho, did I say that correctly?
Absolutely correct, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Wanted to make sure I had it on the record right. So thank you all for joining us this morning. And so I'm calling the meeting to order. We have all 5 commissioners are present. And we're going to go ahead and get started with just the strategic planning kind of budget workshop discussion for Spokane County for the 2025 budget. So Randy, I'll let you take it away.
Welcome, commissioners. This meeting is just if there were any amendments that you wanted to make to the documents that we have published that you will be voting on. If you do make amendments, please remember that you'll be voting on the documents we've published, and you would either need to make motions to amend those documents if you so want to make any amendments. And I'm looking to Jim also to make sure I said that correctly. So the floor is yours. If there's anything you wanted to change in these documents before we go, or that you were going to want to make motions to as we go over for the final hearings.
The clerk reached out maybe a week or two ago, I think after our last, did we get that issue
Randy, we get
worked out?
Yes, I did meet with the clerk's office and explained to him what the vacancy adjustment meant and that he is happy with that explanation, understanding he just because we don't give him more doesn't mean he has to automatically lay someone off. So he's all fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we have the clerk's office and the prosecutor's office
Yes.
reach out as well, and I think they're okay with where we're at.
Yes.
As well.
Yep.
Are there any other items? Good with that.
Just a question. So under capital, we do have the jail accounted for.
Yes, we under capital with what you'll be adopting today, it does include the let me get the words. I'm going to say it wrong otherwise. The jail capacity remodel that is included in there.
Okay.
We also have the infrastructure. We have a number of parks and fair projects through REIT 1 and REIT 2 and some special money. And we have some limited other projects. We did not have a lot of extra money this year for capital because we used it more for operating. And so we only allocated about just short of 1.5 million of our operating revenue or of our current year revenue towards capital this year. The rest would be special funds and or future potential debt or things like that going.
So did we go through the rest of the capital budget then items that have been requested to see if we wanted to use any fund balance or undesignated reserves?
I would say we probably didn't spend as much time on capital. I would say you guys, as commissioners, you could revisit that at any time throughout the year. So that may be budget amendments coming up as we get into next year. So for example, one of the projects like the infrastructure with some critical infrastructure, that is one of the potential sources of funding for that project, which we have not identified yet. We know the scope of the project, but we haven't identified the funding sources for that. I expect more of those discussions to happen as we get into the spring, the first quarter. And there are other items on there that if you want to bring them forward, we can. Which is why we included them in the 6-year CIP, so that if they were eligible for REIT 1 or REIT 2, we can then apply those funds toward that, because if they weren't on the list, we of course would not.
I think also did the group put that contingency in, for like $1 million?
We have 1 point, yeah, just basically 1.5 million we took, that we, of our current revenue that we're using, we're setting aside for capital projects.
Which isn't enough to do everything that wants to be done.
No, if you wanted to do more, you would definitely need to pull that out of fund balance.
Is there any miscellaneous items or any executive sessions before we need to go?
That would be.
One of the miscellaneous items I wanted to bring up is that, I have my new piece in my furniture over in the new office, so, IT is working to get everything transitioned. But my thought is for the current office is that since there's 3 commissioners that are over in the other building and we do meetings here, that would become kind of a roaming commissioner space for us to drop our stuff. But, you know, if we need have a docking station still there, so after a meeting here, you can go in there and use it. So it could be kind of a roaming commissioner office for the 3 commissioners that will be then transitioning back and forth between the 2 spaces. So, any problem with that? So once we get it all cleaned out, then we'll just become that roaming commissioner area. So I think I know it's been helpful. I mean, as I look to move over, there's still a lot of times I'm meeting with people from here right after a meeting.
Isn't that kind of what the small conference room serves as though?
But to be able to put your laptop in and use it too. So there's a lot of times I'm meeting with people and I want to be on my laptop as well. So when I go into the office.
That's what a laptop is for.
I
You can take it wherever you want.
It'll just be easier to have that space, so.
Okay. I don't know. I wasn't sure. I mean, do we have a staff member that might want to move over? I mean, we have people spread out. I know some are up on 4th floor. I know Jeff's over here. I mean, I don't know. I figured somebody would move in. I mean, it's a prime office with a window.
It is, and it's a prime office for 3 commissioners to be able to use it as a rotation as well. So,
Okay.
since we're not all in the same room and in the same building, so. There's another Jeff maybe moving, so.
I mean, why don't we just do that for now, and then if there's another use down the road,
We can discuss it, yeah.
I'm sorry, I wanted to get back to the capital, but I
Okay.
just get back to so we're just deciding today, is the will of the board then to just wait on some of the capital requests and just do those, like, address those in January? I'm thinking of like juvenile court had some requests. There was, I mean, obviously there's the big facilities upgrade that you were referring to, Randy, but you know, I don't know if we went through all of the different capital requests and decided, is that what we're basically saying, is that we'll look at those in January?
We did go through some of those, one of the planning sessions. I know there was a juvenile one that is currently in progress that we said we were gonna continue that one out and finish that. But that is as far as we got. We only did it that one session. Actually, we did 2 sessions. The first session was more talking towards parks and fairs. And then the next session, we talked about the other ones. We did not have a lot of money, so there were not a lot of things that we decided to continue on. Because we used those funds instead for operations. So if there are more that the board wishes to do, I would recommend we do that in the first quarter. But again, your source is gonna have to be fund balance.
Right.
Because you have not set enough aside really to do anything else with that. And you did not do a road shift or anything like that that you could have used for capital for the central campus.
Right, I think what we had decided was, let's get our operating budget balanced. And then
Yeah.
use any remaining,
Yeah. So
and
have-
then we can come
we have-
back to the capital.
Yes,
Cause
we
it's
have-
hard to make decisions on capital, not knowing how much we had.
And you have
from,
right now have $1,480,000 set aside for capital.
But, and we haven't allocated that yet. Okay. Oh, I thought that we had,
But we do.
I thought we had allocated that.
That's for the jail capacity.
Oh, that's right.
Okay.
We did allocate that. My mistake.
Alright,
Thank you,
alright.
Tessa.
Okay,
She knows everything.
Okay, so
I mean, I'm okay with doing that. I just wanted to make sure the board was all okay, just taking that on in the first quarter of next year.
The identified, so in the capital plan right now, the 1,480,000 that Randy just referenced is coming out of general fund. And then there's another 1,520,000 that's coming out of fund balance. So that's the 3 million that's been identified to fund the jail capacity project. There's no other funds that have been identified to come out of fund balance yet. So obviously a ton of projects on here. We do have the campus infrastructure identified as a project. We haven't discussed and finalized what the funding source is. As Randy mentioned, it could be a combination of ARP, could be a combination of fund balance, could be a combination of financing using some sort of REIT to pay off debt. So it's on the capital plan, identified it appropriately, but we haven't identified the funding sources. I think that was the biggest one that I recall that was not really identified for this year, but a known project that the board wanted to.
but there was lots of small projects that have been identified by departments that don't have funding
That's correct.
at this point in time. So,
Everything else is pretty much accounted for either through REIT or some special revenue funds from other sources.
Well, and just keep in mind that, we've got a new legislature and a new governor. And some of the things that were carryovers from the last session might get altered as we move through this next session and stuff. So I probably would be reluctant to try and spend money until we find out what the legislature is going to do with some of the requirements that they've imposed, including the clean building and the timelines for conversion over and a number of other things. The state is, if you can believe what you see in the newspaper, is going to have a shortfall that they've got to deal with. And maybe if they realize that the rest of us are dealing with it, maybe they'll adjust some of the timelines. So, really want to see what the legislature is going to do to us before we start spending money that might not be able to claw back.
well, and I think partly though too, we've got that whole the steam issue that we've got to deal with no
Yep.
matter what. It's a big dollar amount that's coming. So that's where trying to figure out where we have that money and how we do it. It's gonna be crucial that, is critical to where we're at today to keep everything ready. But yeah, I agree on the rest of it. To try to just change things to meet the Clean Energy Act, I would delay as well, see where we're at.
If there's no discussions on capital, I don't want to stop if there is, but I just, Tori's here, she did have a mental health request. Actual request for a program.
And with miscellaneous.
Okay, so
Yeah,
that'll be
we
under
could do
miscellaneous.
that next year also, because it would
Yes.
be a budget of it.
Yep.
We can.
That'd be good to get some.
Is there anything else on capital? It's just, no, we don't have enough funds to do everything we need to do. But I think it'll be a really good discussion because I think we do have to figure out what do we have to do to maintain. So that way we don't let assets further deteriorate, which would then cost us more money in the future, so. Sounds like we'll have that discussion then first year. Okay, for the miscellaneous, then Tori will let you go and then
anticipating a budget vote today. Am I authorized to work on a press release? It's head nods for that.
Sounds fun, yeah.
Right.
Is everyone's coming?
It's
Good money. Tori's next. Okay. Everybody's coming out now.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Tori.
I am here on a request for mental health sales tax dollars or funds for our domestic violence or early intervention domestic violence program. I think I briefed you on this before. We are seeing a lot of serious offenses and then a lot of domestic violence cases where to go through that regular process of diversion, it can take 3 to 4 weeks to 5 weeks before those families actually get services. A lot of them are a book and replace. So we send them home to where the crisis happened. So we're starting a new program, and we have started this program with our functional family therapist, who then will meet with those families and get services to them immediately. And then included in these funds is some case management by our probation counselors. So my total request is $145,000 for the FFT therapist who will provide immediate family intervention as well as connections to the community for those families. And then about a caseload total with 2 different probation counselors for the case management. So again, a total annual request of
So, and that would be an ongoing request.
correct.
Okay, and then how does this differ from what the Y does for their domestic violence program? I guess just trying to see what the community is doing versus what we would need to be doing.
Sure, and the Y is a community resource more for the adults. And we use the Y, but for other things, but no, these are kids that are gonna come into our system and we would have worked with them in a different way in the process that would have taken longer. So these are kids that are gonna come in criminally, they're not gonna come straight to the Y. So we are gonna work with these kids one way or another. This is just a different way, earlier intervention of doing that and tailored specific to the domestic violence in the home. That community connection that the therapist would, because that's a big piece, it's a big trend, serve kids in the community. And so that'll be a piece of what she does, whatever that connection is that meets the needs of the individual families.
Okay. I guess I'm just trying to make sure, what I don't want is have these programs kind of get siloed, but because I think if the kids are coming into our system and there's domestic violence in the house, it's the adults most of the time, right?
Well,
I mean, I guess that's what I'm
depends.
trying to.
These are the kids that are assaulting parents.
Okay,
But oftentimes that is not all, it can be a definite, two-way straight intervention sometimes. The law enforcement on who they choose to bring in after that family crisis.
okay.
So that's what's exciting about this program is that community connection piece. Instead of just coming in what they would have done and met with a member of our community or one of our staff and get a standard sort of set of conditions. This is about more of the community's connection and tailored specific to family needs. So when they're done with us, they can continue with those connections.
So is this something we're already doing or we're gonna start doing?
We have just started it.
Okay.
So we observed probably just 3 kids now. We got 2 kids in this weekend on those charges that they'll start working on today.
So just like I'll finish it then. I mean, I'd be happy as a pilot project, but I think then it'd be coming back and reporting what were the measurements. So kind of determining what measurements we're gonna use
Absolutely.
to provide the data for us to make a decision on an ongoing basis. So that would be my thought.
So I was leaning towards the same thing about pilot, was what's going through my mind, but what's your funding source right now then? So you just started it.
We have some other funds that we will use for this in this short-term basis. They're not ongoing funds.
Okay.
They're temporary funds,
Okay.
one-time use funds.
So again, how many FTEs then?
But this will be one total.
One
2
total.
of them on a part-time basis.
And the total dollar amount again?
For the probation counselors is 90,000 and 55,000 is for the therapist annually.
So basically 150,000.
Yeah, 100. Okay. We're strong on data collection, so I'm confident.
When I think it'd be good to determine what those measurements would be, so that way we know.
Right.
So if you could kind of identify those as we look to this pilot project.
And we have, one is I want to say validated, I'm not quite sure with our therapist, but it's a pre and post on the family. And then, of course, we're always measuring recidivism. So do they reoffend? Do we keep them out of the system? But we have a Washington State, all juvenile courts have a risk needs assessment. And so part of that, one domain in that assessment is a family domain that measures, pre-program and post. That's
I think it's a wonderful purpose and I fully support it. I just have a technical question for the attorneys, frankly, that I think is better asked outside of a public meeting. Do that right after our briefing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense and if you can report on the recidivism numbers, the lowering the risk of further violence in the home. I think that would be really, I think it sounds like a great program because it doesn't make sense to send people back into a situation where there's been violence and we need to do better. So thanks for working on it.
absolutely, yes.
And Tori's worked with Justin. Justin's reviewed it, felt like it was qualified for the mental health sales tax use. It's behavioral health support for this program. And believe in conjunction with that also had a legal review as well and fit the eligibility uses. And just for the board's reminder of the 16.5 million that's projected to come in mental health sales tax next year. There's been identified a little over $15 million of uses, so there's capacity to be able to put this program in there if that's what the local.
And that's not in the budget, so it'll be a budget amendment for next year.
That is correct, Commissioner. The spending authority is in the mental health sales tax fund, but it is not in the general fund. So my proposal would be that instead of amending the budget today, we would bring this forward as a budget amendment for increased spending authority in the general fund in the first quarter when we bring things like PO rollovers to work.
Said I'm good at it, but I'd like to see it as a pilot project to see how well it's doing and how it's working.
I agree with you.
Thank you. Yeah, Jeff, I just want to make sure, or Jeff that we press statement on the budget. Is everyone okay with that? Okay. Perfect.
GSI's legislative agenda is Wednesday, day after tomorrow. I'd like to thank Commissioners Kearns and Jordan in their offices for RSVPing. At this point, I have 2 seats of 8 taken. Want to see who else might want to use these seats. I need to get the names in. And we're 48 hours away. It's doors open at 3:30. The program is from 4 to 6. There's an hour reception afterward from 6 to 7. It's at the Davenport Grand.
So I am gonna go.
Who do you have as a confirmation?
Commissioner Kearns and Ron and Commissioner CUNY.
Bill and Victoria.
Senator Peterson, the majority leader, Representative Stokes-Berry, the House Republican leader, as well as Senator Short and Representative Larry Springer. So two seasoned Republicans and 2 seasoned Democrats. You've all been there in the past. I'm sure you know something.
And how many seats do we have?
We have 8 seats.
Okay.
So there's still 3 available.
All right.
Bill.
For both you and Amy, or
I don't know if Amy can now.
okay.
I'll be out of town.
I got your regrets.
You wanna go, Pat?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Love to fill a seat.
Scott, what are you doing?
When is it tomorrow?
Wednesday.
Oh, Wednesday?
4 to
4 to 6 at the Grand.
I'll take a look here. I'm not sure.
Jeff, you going through the hassle of putting the table together, save one for yourself.
And I had regrets, but because I was supposed to go to NACO board meeting, but I'm gonna zoom into that, try to go. So.
Yeah, I wasn't sure of my schedule.
How many seats are left?
I think if Scott's a yes and I go, I think it's.
There we go.
Thank you all.
Anything else?
Sorry, just
Okay.
the reminder email just popped in. I was like, oh, I haven't popped in one room. I'm gonna go in and do that.
We're here voluntarily, not direct.
So back on mental health sales tax, board had, when we reviewed mental health sales tax, had earmarked $7 million of reserves for our crisis relief and sobering center. We've already allocated 5 million from the opioid funds, which gets us to about 12. We had we have an ask into the feds. And it's been indicated that I think we have 3 million in there, as I think Jeff shared with me last week. And Jeff and I have been talking with some of the uncertainty as to whether these congressionally directed spending are still going to be available, or whether they're going to go with resolutions and not have this available. A recommendation is to put about another $3 million in mental health sales tax earmarked out of our reserves for the crisis relief and sobering center, which gets us up to about 15 million for funding. We'll have a better idea of what our estimated costs might be once we get through a validation phase, but that's still months out. If it turns out we get the dollars from the feds, great, we may not need those, but at least having those identified in earmarks so we know what our funding sources are for the crisis relief and sobering center, I think would be important. Again, nothing you have to act upon today, but I think that's something I wanted to put in your heads on a radar item, that it would be good, I think, to identify those and earmark them within our mental health sales tax reserves.
How large is our state request on that? We had
If we even have one, I don't think we have a specific one.
I think we did Vance Ferry was our capital. I mean, capital's gonna be limited, and knowing that we're thinking we have the congressional funding, so I don't know. Jeff, are you listening? Can you come back in the door?
I think what the board decided is put wording in there, state if you have some needs to deploy some of your opioid dollars.
That's right.
Then we have a project that you could invest in. I think that's what we did. Is that right, Jeff?
I'm sure it is.
Would you like us to repeat the question?
Well, at the federal level, there's talk of a full year continuing resolution. If that were to happen, most likely earmarks should be out. I think it's more likely that they're gonna do a continuing resolution through March, April-ish, somewhere end of the first calendar quarter. Remember, the feds are on October 1 fiscal year. So we don't know where the feds is at this point. The current continuing resolution goes to the 20th of this month. So in the next 18 days, we should have a response or a closed government. Those are the two options. No one's talking about closing the government at this point, so I assume we will know what that date is at the federal level. We are in the current Senate version of the budget. We'd only requested this on the Senate side. We had a different request on the House. So more than likely it will stay in, especially with it being a Murray request, and she's current chair of approps. She'll still be ranking chair or ranking member moving forward. At the state level, for the governor's budget, we only put in Plants Ferry. We only put in one request. We can certainly, we have this in our legislative agenda under the opioid funding account for a request. So it is in our state agenda draft, which will, can't remember if it's on this Tuesday or next Tuesday. It might be on tomorrow afternoon's agenda for final passage. So once you guys vote on that, it will officially be in our agenda.
So the last time the incoming president was president, he had a build grant program that we did very, very well in. And I know that there was conversation about a raise grant being announced after the first of the year, but I don't know whether that is still going to happen? Are they going to kill the raise and go to build again? Or is there any conversation about what the future looks like for grant opportunities for infrastructure?
I can't speak to those ones specifically. I know broadly speaking, the current administration is working hard to get some funding out. Funding that's been authorized but not yet allocated. And with the holidays coming, those grants are so big, if they're not currently in process, they're not gonna happen.
Yeah.
By the end of this month, or I guess January 20. Well, the Congress would be the end of the month. The new Congress is sworn in on January 3rd, and those would come under. I don't know, it's congressional authority, but it's the executive side, so I honestly don't know if we have till January 3rd or January 20th. Either way, if it's not already in process, I'm likely not gonna be completed by January 20th.
Okay.
The incoming is gonna depend on new chairs, new cabinet secretaries. So I think the jury will still be out on what that will look like. And if there's funding, there's quite a bit of the IIJA funding that's still on the table, so to speak. Will the incoming administration, are they gonna want to use it? Are they gonna claw back? Those are all unknowns at this point. The funding is authorized. In the case, I'll probably find a use for it, but if they have other priorities, they're big on pay fors, as they call it in DC. So that would be money that they could claw back to pay for something else that's a higher priority. That's a long way of saying I don't know.
So then the original question was, did we put a request into the state for the stabilizations?
We actually won't do that until January, maybe early February. So we put in for the official governor's budget.
For plans vary.
Generally, we wait until the legislative session has started. And we know who all the chairs are and all the decisions have been made before we put in the official request. So we, right after the first of the year, we would start
So are we
on that piece of,
anticipating,
where we actually fill out the form and put in the request.
are we anticipating putting in money for that?
You tell me.
I mean,
I do what I'm told.
know, previous discussions. In our previous discussions.
But yes, it is in our legislative agenda.
Okay.
And I think it would be a smart one to put in. Sorry for my smart remark there.
You're just fine.
I would say that would be a smart one to go for because it is out of the opioid account. And as we're hearing in the press, the state is having some budget constraints.
That's right. That was the discussion, is that it wasn't coming out of capital. We
So
wanted
again,
to
it's
come
not out of
it.
capital, it's not out of their general fund or operating fund, so to speak. I think that would be a smart request. Because we don't put in the official ask for everything that's in our legislative agenda. The legislative agenda is our talking points, but we actually have to fill out specific paperwork and find a House member and a Senate member who submitted on our behalf. We submit it to an individual office who then will advocate for us.
So when is our legislative meeting with our,
The 17th. Which will be 2 Tuesdays from tomorrow,
I mean, how's that
10 a.m.
during our, Tuesday
During your
morning
regular meeting.
we're gonna
This-
have our legislative meeting with our legislators. So we may want to ask them specifically, if you don't mind adding that to the list, to specifically ask them how we go about asking for the opioid settlement dollars, which I never considered, but how we ask for those dollars.
They would
specifically.
make the ask for us.
Right,
Okay.
but
Yeah, well, what is the process? I assume it'd be through the budget chairs.
But I think we just need to ask them, let them know that we want it to be separate, not part of the capital.
Right.
Since we know capital is gonna be very limited.
So, and that will be, if that is the one ask we're gonna do, if you have additional asks we wanna do. We'll need
I
to
think we
cross
still
that
have-
bridge after the first year.
Plans vary, but that's capital. I mean, so.
My knowledge, the governor's budget is not yet released. It usually comes out the first half of December. With it being an outgoing governor, the governor's budget is really never more than a press conference. But it's good to be in it. It's a talking point for us. With it being an outgoing governor, I think it'll even have less impact. I'm sure Governor-elect Ferguson is putting together his own thoughts, but he doesn't have to release it. So it'd still be good for us to make it in though, to be able to say we made that cut. But it's the legislature, regardless of who the governor is, they usually say thank you very much and then start their own work. Separate from the governor's budget.
Other questions for Jeff?
Thank you, that helps.
May not want to go yet. Okay. Anything, Scott, you had this.
No, that was it. Those are the ones.
Those are the ones.
Mental health sales
Okay.
tax stuff.
Anyone else? No executive sessions at this point?
No.
Okay. Then with that, what we will do is we will take a 10-minute recess, where we take a break to then move over to our hearing room to continue this 9 o'clock budget hearing agenda, and we will start with our budget hearing over there. So thank you all. We'll see you in 10 minutes.
Okay, we've got our technical issues handled and we're ready to go. So this is a continuation of our budget hearing meeting, our year 2025 budget hearing from our earlier 9 o'clock. So please let the record reflect that we do have all 5 commissioners that are present here, and we do have 2 items. So I'm calling this part of the meeting to order, and I'll start with Randy before we start our public hearing.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, a short presentation as we get into the public hearing. Just before we get off, please I'd like to thank Tess and Jason for all the work they've done this whole budget season, putting this budget together, and also for the beautiful graphics that you would not have if it weren't for them. So we'll go to the next slide. There we go. To start with, this is the beginning of the budget. We're going back in time here. These are all different things that the commissioners could focus on. And here we've highlighted the 3 that we focused on this budget cycle, which was public safety, financial stability, and service efficiency. Next slide. Oh, thank you. It's a little slow. Just a recap, primarily for the public. You know, this process started over 6 months ago, where we went through the revenue projections. We had the initial submissions by the departments. Based upon that, we went back and asked the departments to redo their budgets based on a target budget. After that, we had a number of weeks where we had presentations from a number of departments. And then we're coming to today, where the board has deliberated numerous times to come up with this year's budget. And next slide. And here's some of the things that this budget is focusing on. It's focusing on public safety. Again, we have the Real-Time Crime Center, ARP funded, that will be is in this budget. We also have the sheriff's helicopter. It is part of the 24 budget, but we don't physically take receipt of it until 2025, and we don't pay for it until 2025. Next slide. These are some of the outside agencies that you have included in this year's budget. Of course, we have community health. We have economic development, which is our PDAs and our chamber memberships. And then we also have some community and workforce assistant. Of course, the children's waiting room, that's for parents who are visiting the court campus and don't have other means to care for their children as they're here at the courts. So next slide. Here's some capital projects that you have in next year's budget. We have some campus infrastructure updates that we need. We've got 12 million of that slotted for 2025. We have a capacity remodel. We have a number of parks projects, the biggest ones being Camas Meadows, which is our first park on the West Plains, and we have Plants Ferries Park. So those are all in our capital projects for 2025. Next slide. Public Works, here's some major 2025 improvements. Of course, the biggest one we did complete this year, which was Bigelow Gulch. So that's not on the list anymore. Otherwise, you would normally see that up there also year after year. Next slide. Here's some mental health and behavioral health services that you're providing in this year's budget. Again, we have the Crisis Stabilization Center. That is an estimated amount of $15 million for that facility. We do have that amount in this year's budget from a number of funding sources. As we discussed 30 minutes ago, we may have other funding sources also, but we do have it in our budget for this time. And then here's just some of the mental health sales tax uses other than the Mental Health Crisis Stabilization Center that are in this next year's budget. So the next slide. And then we look at community development. Here's a number of the projects that we have in our budget this year from community development, small town infrastructure, that's going to be Fairfield and Spangle. And next slide, along with community development, we also have some homeless services. We've got 7.4 million in the budget this year for that, from preventative to emergency shelter investments. And next slide, we also have some affordable housing in this year's budget. We've got about $9.9 million. There's 3 of the larger projects being highlighted and the number of units that are being provided from those funds. And the next slide. This one here is the summary of your total budget, 24 versus 25. 2024, we did have a larger overall budget. Again, this is with all funds, and that is primarily because we had more ARP money that we spent in 2024. We have less of that left over and being spent in 2025. So that is really the reason that this money is down. Again, you see the general fund is at 264.1 compared to 265.2. Capital projects were at 58.3 versus 55.5. That's the only one that is actually increased. And again, that really relates to the infrastructure improvements that we're making. Next slide. These are just the details that you will have in your resolution that you'll be passing today. Here is the general fund by agency. So this is the revenues and expenditures. Again, the general fund is just over $264 million. Next slide. These are some one-time monies for doofbies that are in this year's budget. So we're using just over $1 million of those doofbies. That's part of the previous slide of the $264 million. And last slide in this presentation, or a couple slides actually, these are all the other funds that are included in this year budget. That's how we get to the 800 and, excuse me, I didn't write the number down, but 864 million. I was going to say 54, so I'm glad I looked. This gets us to the 864 million. These, of course, are our special revenue funds. And if we go to the next slide, you will see the debt service, construction, enterprise, and internal service funds. And that gets us to our total budget, as I said, of $864.8 million. And that is all I have to present here. Now you can open up to your public.
Are there any other questions for Randy at this point in time? Okay, seeing none, then this is a public hearing item, so I will open it up for anyone who wishes to testify on behalf of the budget at this point in time. Second call for anyone wishing to testify on the 2025 budget. Anyone online? Okay, seeing no one in the audience and no one online, third and final call for anyone wishing to testify. I will then close the public hearing item and look to my fellow commissioners.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the Spokane County budget for calendar year 2025 to include updating the capital facilities element of the Spokane County's comprehensive plan to be consistent with the capital improvement plan within the 2025 budget as presented by staff.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. That will then take us to item number 3A. This is not a public hearing item, so I will look to my fellow commissioners.
Madam Chair, move to approve resolution number 3 in the matter of certifying to the Spokane County Assessor and the amount of taxes levied in the 2024 to be collected in 2025 upon the property in Spokane County for county purposes from the general fund, road fund, and conservation futures.
Second.
A motion is second. Are there any further discussion on this? Randy, you look like you had something you were going to say, so I just wanted to make sure.
No, I was just going to explain the motion, but
You're welcome to.
again, the motion that you're going to is to collect the taxes that you voted on at your November 18th meeting. So, and this has been worked. We did reach out to the assessor's office and verified these numbers with them. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Oh, Commissioner French.
And just for clarification purposes, Mr. Bischoff, the amount of the tax that was set, I think 2 weeks ago. And so what this is just certifying is an action the board has already taken. Is that a fair assessment?
That is a fair assessment.
Thank you.
correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? So motion passes unanimously. That is all that we have. Is there any other items? Mr. Simmons.
No, in case, we didn't even look past the humor that Jason injected into the last slide there. It does have a fork in our budget, so the proverbial, let's put a fork in this and be done. Just didn't want to miss that one, but no,
Good catch.
yeah, thank you for all the work that the board did on the budget process. It was very many work sessions, a lot of good interaction, got a lot of good input. Appreciate all of your, one more, Ron, the next one.
Yeah.
There it is.
There it
Guess
is.
everyone can see.
The fork in the
So-
budget.
Okay.
Delicious.
Okay, Commissioner French, you have a comment?
Yeah, I unfortunately wasn't able to be in the chambers when you were finalizing the workup on the budget and stuff. And I just want to be able to compliment Mr. Bischoff and Tessa and all of the accounting staff. I mean, this has been one of the most thorough and comprehensive budget processes I think I've experienced here at the county. And I just want to compliment you on a great job and not only getting the numbers to where we can adopt them, but also being in a format that explains it very, very well and easy for the public to follow along. So I just want to compliment you on a great job. Thank you.
And I'll just second that.
Yeah, and I will say the same. It's not always easy to get all the numbers to a point where everyone can understand them and massage them to make sense out of them to then make a budget that's going to be a balanced budget. So I just want to say thank you to Tessa and Jason and especially to Randy. We appreciate everything you are doing and continue to do for Spokane County. So thank you all very much. So with that, we will then just sign our documents and we will adjourn for the morning. Thank you all very much.